that you have experience working as a senior software engineer at ShareChat. Would you mind sharing a few key projects you worked on during your time there?
Yes, so at ShareChat, I was mostly involved in working on a lot of backend projects. One of the biggest projects was to redesign the complete architecture for the messaging platform.
Can you elaborate a bit on the scope of the project and the main challenges you faced while redesigning the messaging architecture?
So the messaging architecture at ShareChat involved two microservices that we implemented. The first microservice was for the regular messaging flow, and the second microservice is for real-time messaging. So for the real-time messaging microservice, we used Kafka to handle the message queue.
What considerations did you make while selecting Kafka for your messaging architecture?
So the requirements for the real-time microservice was that it has to be low latency and it has to be highly scalable. And Kafka is already for its performance and low latency, and it is also horizontally scalable. So all this consideration made it the ideal choice for our use case.
I enjoyed getting a better insight into your professional experience. I would like to start with learning a bit more about you. What do you like doing in your free time?
I usually listen to music or watching some web series nowadays, and I play dhol. It's a traditional Maharashtrian music instrument, and I am playing this instrument with Aramba Dholta Shapatak in Dombivli.
That's really cool. What do you enjoy most about playing the dhol?
I love the music, so the rhythm and the atmosphere while performing the dhol with my friends is the very best time for me and my group also. And it gives some positive energy, and frankly, it's you can say physical activity also. So that will be help for your physical activity.
That's so cool. About your educational background.
Sure, Tina. I did a BTech in Computer Science and Engineering from IIT Jammu in 2021.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining in. My name is Meenakshi. I'm a marketer by profession, and today I'm here to have a fireside chat conversation with Roli Gupta, founder, CEO of Babblebots.ai. The topic for today's discussion is Gen AI, fueling talent teams for 2024 and beyond. So without any further delay, let's get started. I'd like to first introduce our speaker today. Roli Gupta, she's been in the startup game for over 15 years, rocking it in Silicon Valley and India. She's a real mover and shaker, driving big changes in software, solar energy, finance, and now diving into exciting world of generative artificial intelligence. Her current dedication to Gen AI within the hiring space is poised to empower HR professionals in making informed decisions. So, welcoming Roli. Hi, Roli. How are you today?
Hi, Meenakshi. Thank you. And thanks to everyone for joining us. We know this is the end of the year and people have a lot of plans. So the fact that so many people can take out the time to listen to what we have to share is great. So thank you all for joining.
Great. Before we get started, I would like to, invite the audience today to participate in a small poll. This poll is very relevant to the conversation. So it will appear in, 3, 2, 1, 0, any second now. We'll just pause for a minute here, wait for responses to come, and then we'll resume the conversation. I'll request all the attendees today to, please participate in this. This is very, very relevant to the conversation. Okay, so the poll has been done. I hope all of you have given your input there. So we just move on to the next part of this conversation. And yeah, the result is also, available with us. We'll talk about this a little bit later.
Yeah,
So
just a sec, actually. Could we see the poll results once? Yeah, okay. Okay. Okay, cool. Okay, great.
all right.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for participating. This is really great. So we move to the next phase of this conversation today. Roli, you have been a subject matter expert in generative AI. We would like to understand from you, how do you see Gen AI transforming, the hiring universe, so to speak? If you could just throw some light and, kind of, yeah.
Yeah. So, so this is the first in a series of webinars that we are conducting at Babblebots, and there was no better subject to talk about because 2023 has been about generative AI. The whole revolution around generative AI started with, in some sense, the launch of ChatGPT, November of 2022. And by the time the new year rolled around, people started to see that there was so much new capability that is possible with computing now. So I think makes sense to sort of end the year with sort of seeing how actually these new capability of computing and artificial intelligence is going to change our particular area of interest, which is around hiring, and it's around people and how companies build their teams. So, so yeah, we'd like to just kind of share some of our learnings and how we are enabling more of generative AI to solve the problems around hiring.
Great. So Roli, would you like to take the audience through some of the observations, some of the challenges that you've yourself seen in the hiring space, and how is Gen AI transforming that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to try to keep this conversation as much as like a dialogue as possible, but I do have a few slides I'd like to share just to give a structure to what all are the tools and tips and tricks you can use. You don't need any platform for this. You don't need really to license anything. These are the capabilities that are there today. And I'm hoping many people in the audience are already using some parts of these capabilities. But let's just walk through some of these, and then Meenakshi, we can go back to maybe more specific questions that you may have.
Sure.
At the same time, I will also encourage the audience to maybe put in your questions in the Q&A, and I'd be very happy to answer those and make sure that this everybody goes back with some learnings from this session and some insights. So I'll just pull up my screen. Okay. So just so that we're all on the same page, what is generative AI anyway, right? I think depending on what part of the stack, in some sense, you have looked at, you may have a different idea of what it is, but it is basically, it's a way of looking at a lot of data that can be multimodal data. So it can be video, it can be voice, it is images, it is like, text, of course, and you use all this data and you are feeding them into models, and the models now have become powerful enough that they can give creative outputs, right? So the generative AI, the generative part comes from the systems being able to generate new and creative outputs from the input that was this large data sets that have gone into feeding these models. So depending on what mode of input you are using, there are many different platforms that are available right now. So I'm pretty sure everybody here has used ChatGPT in some form or the other, but Google Bard does similar stuff as well. But it's mostly being used for text even at the moment, although OpenAI has come out with other capabilities as well, but it's still most well known for the text-based Gen AI only. But if you and DALL-E also actually belongs to OpenAI as well, but that Midjourney is it's another independent team that has been working for the last 5-6 years to create these really interesting images of just you give a bit of a user prompt. So these are text to image type of creations that you can say, tell me what the sunset in Mumbai looks like, and it actually gives you that's all you have to tell, and it gives you a good description, but just gives you a good depiction of what sunset in Mumbai is going to look like. So there are many tools for that. So for example, Synthesia is something that maybe you are familiar with in the business world, which is being used for video and speech generation. There are tools that are creating music and songs now. So there is like no end to the creativity that is getting unleashed using generative AI. So I think we are in a very interesting times right now. And I think it's going to only accelerate from this point. So it's good to see where we are in December 2023, because next year is going to look quite different. So coming back to what we all care about here is that how do we solve some of these problems using these new capabilities in talent acquisition, recruitment, hiring. So if we saw the poll, I think these were in fact some of the problems that people had brought up, which was around, especially in a market like India, where it's a candidate long market. You have a lot of interest for every role. It becomes a little overwhelming for any size team to sort of cater properly to that kind of interest. Of course, interviewing and scheduling is something that we all are living with, irrespective of whether you're a small company or a large company. As a result of these things, it does take a really long time to offer, and for good candidates that may be that may not be the best way to sort of bring them into your fold or attract them to your company if your process is too long. And along with all the problems the company is having, the companies are also our customers are trying to provide a good candidate experience. But in the sort of the operational challenges of running a recruitment process, the candidate experience is often underwhelming. So what we have seen, and of course there are other challenges. In some roles, there are not enough good candidates. That is a very sort of an understood problem as well. So there are, of course, other problems beyond these that are also there. One of the popular ones, which I'm sure everybody here is going to agree to, is like people take an offer and don't join. So these are actually human problems, and not all human problems are solved with AI at the moment. So we wanted to talk about a few areas where actually even today, without a lot more intervention, you can do a lot to solve some of these problems. And I just wanted to take like a few minutes to walk through these 4 particular areas of hiring and see what kind of Gen AI interventions are available. So the first, we were talking about an overwhelming candidate interest, and pretty much anybody who has used like Naukri or LinkedIn or found it have realized that, like, you put in a job description now, and by tomorrow you have 100 candidates. Like, especially if it's a more popular, it's a more appealing role, you do get a lot of interest really fast. Now, what happens with all these sourcing platforms is it is in their interest to actually show you a lot of interested candidates. And even though they have some filters which claim that they are using some AI to actually shortlist the candidates, but if you still see the number of candidates that you find from there which are not suitable is still very high, right? So as a team with limited time and resources, how do you go through that to filter to, let's say, from your 100 candidates to the top 20 or 30 candidates? So actually, if you have not used, I would encourage you to use, in fact, the paid version of ChatGPT. It can, in fact, do resume parsing much more powerful than any other like sort of ATS type of tool that you may have. Because with LLMs, these large language models, and including Google Bard, and like, if you have your local versions of Llama, which is the Facebook model as well, you will see that actually things have gone much beyond keyword match, right? So if you have a particular kind of a job description and you wanted to match resumes with it, it doesn't just do a keyword match. It does actually look at what were the concepts and what were the skill sets that you were looking at. And they may be called in many different forms, but it is still able to give you a good stack ranking of candidates who are maybe more suitable for that job description. So you could, in fact, in some sense, upload both the job description and maybe 10 candidates on some of these tools and tell them, hey, can you rank these candidates on their suitability? So this kind of capability is already there, and I'm hoping that your teams are, in fact, using some of these capabilities. Another quick thing is that, like, how do you, so you, let's say you have a list of 100 candidates and you want to just compare them across whatever metrics are more useful to you, which could be around, let's say, the number of years of experience, or it could be, let's say, whether they went to a tier 1 college, tier 2 college, or like, a specific skill set that they have, how many years they've worked in a particular technology, or like, if they've done B2B sales, how many years have they done B2B sales, what kind of B2B sales, for example. So you can, in fact, ask these systems to tabulate this data in a way that is downloadable and it's easily consumable by your team, right? So you don't have to go through these CVs one by one to get this. You can upload a batch and sort of get this information very, very quickly. The only thing that you may come across is that, like, if you are uploading hundreds of CVs, maybe you will definitely be going beyond the token limits of these. So it becomes a little difficult to just like put in a lot of data. But like if we are dealing in 10s and 15s of resumes, I think you should be able to sort of do this comparison quite easily. I'd love to hear in the comments, like if people are using it this way, and like, if there are other things that they have uncovered in using the resume parsing and the job description understanding capabilities. The next area of sort of, in some sense, frustration is around scheduling, of course. And then interviewing is something that is done sequentially and it takes a long time, right? And there are multiple studies that have said that pretty much 30% of a recruiter's time is going in these activities. And this is at the first level only, right? So this is not like when you are processing the late stage candidates or things like that. You're just sort of at the top of the funnel even now. Now, how do you go, how can you become smarter, right, with all these different roles? And there have been assessment platforms for a long time, but the roles change, and your what you are looking for in that role change. So it's not just the skills, but like, what are your other requirements in the roles, they change as well. So your job description is changing, your business is changing. So you can use the capabilities of LLMs to actually figure out that for this job role, what are the top questions that should be asked? Or you can even ask it to certain subjects and use that as a way to evaluate candidates before you start calling them up. So now for this, you can think that there are maybe a lot of other platforms, but imagine doing this yourself really quickly and just, creating a few multiple choice questions to figure out, like, if this person has some basic amount of knowledge in the area that you are looking for. So again, you don't have to go anywhere. This is available with all the open LLM models, and you can just run this yourself. Of course, like with the platform like ours, you can ask very deep probing questions. So, right, so a lot of times when we are doing the first round of interviews, we end up asking maybe 1 or 2 level questions. But if you want to go deep in understanding what the user has said and how to assess, like, if they really know if they're really good at what they're talking about, you can ask deep probing questions, again with the capabilities of LLM. And that is something that's inbuilt in Babblebots, but in general, the probing capabilities can be invoked with different kind of tools. And of course, I think the problem of scheduling is best solved when you don't have to schedule. So we are big fans of asynchronous conversations because then you don't have to schedule, you still get to talk to each other. And basically, a lot of the time is saved from both the sides by not having to play phone tag and just figuring out when somebody else is available. So we do believe that no scheduling is the best way to solve for this issue. So anything that allows you to reduce that or actually eliminate it is the way to go. Then so the long time to offer is sort of like it's an endpoint of what we have talked about in some sense. But to the business, this is the big problem, is that it takes a long time to offer. And after that, you have to wait for 1 or 2 months for somebody to join. So if you take the time to join, and then with all the sort of the long notice period, especially in India, it does become a really long time for you to wait. And this, like, businesses change within a quarter and you're still waiting for a person to join. So it's quite difficult. And I have personally gone through this in some of my previous roles. And to wait for somebody for 3-4 months to join, it just seems like it's an eternity, and you never know what's going to happen. So I think any interventions that allow you to reduce this are going to be very popular. So and why does it take? So I think the question should be that why is it taking that long to offer, right? Again, it goes back to first doing the first round of screening, then maybe some sort of online assessments, and then you have some panel interviews. So you end up with like 3-4 rounds of interviews. And what are you doing in all these 3-4 rounds? Most of the time, you're trying to do like a skill assessment of a person, right? And you're trying to see a fitment, you're trying to see the HR fitment, and then you're also trying to see the skill assessment. Anything that sort of compresses these timelines are going to be welcome by both the candidates and the companies. And we strongly believe that with Gen AI capabilities, this has become a reality. You do not need 3 or 4 rounds of interview to assess a candidate. What you do need, though, is to have maybe one last discussion that's a really good discussion, but it's around a culture fit, it's around chemistry, it's around us answering that question, that do I want to work with this person, or is this person going to fit in our team? Do they belong in my organization as the way, like, does the DNA match? This is something AI cannot help with, and it should be done. And this is where the judgment of the hiring managers and the talent teams comes in, is that does this person belong in your organization? And that is possibly the only check that really needs to be done, because things around a lot of their logistic preferences as well as skills are already uncovered through, like, these Gen AI powered interventions very, very early. And the last thing that I wanted to talk about was from the candidate side. So we've spoken to hundreds of organizations, and I feel like almost everybody wants to do good by candidates. They want to be a workplace of choice, right? But it is very difficult. Of course, once you are in there, then it is different, and then the vibe is different. But in that recruitment process, in the hiring process, can you improve that candidate experience through it? And that itself is going to give you big gains in what people perceive of you as an employer, right? So a couple of things that are really great unlocks right now is the first is that actually not only just AI recruiters, but even with the chatbots and other capabilities, the candidates can speak in the language of their choice now. So not everybody has to speak in English. If they are more comfortable in a mixed language, why not? There is a computing capability of having these mixed language conversations now, and they should be given an opportunity to do that, because whenever you are not comfortable with English and the interviewer is asking you in English, it actually puts the candidate at a little bit of a a backstep, because you're not feeling that confident about your capabilities just because of that communication gap. So I think to be able to speak in a language of the choice is a great experience. And the second is like deep personalizations, right? You don't have to write the same email to everyone. The resume passing can allow you to actually create really interesting shortlisting emails, or even to some extent rejection emails on why somebody was shortlisted or why somebody is rejected. You just personalize everything in a very one-to-one way, which at least gives the candidate a good idea of why you think they are a good fit or why you think they're not a good fit. It just does so much better by the candidate in terms of the time that they have invested with you, and also has them go back with a good feeling about at least they gained something from that experience, even though it was not a job. So I think some of these things companies have been wanting to do, but we do run out of time and we do run out of bandwidth, and there's a lot of other priorities. It's really hard to be deeply personal, even if though we want. But now we have the capabilities, thanks to like these AI co-pilots, that actually can do some of this heavy lifting for us when it comes to personalization. So I think these are some of the things for which the technology is there. It is at your fingertips. It's only about making it a habit to use it and making it a process to sort of use some of these capabilities to get started in using Gen AI towards solving some of your hiring challenges. We do feel that actually these are 10x unlocks. So your team, just think of your team, you or your team, along with like an assistant, or these are called co-pilots, and almost every business vertical has some sort of a co-pilot. We've of course always heard about like, engineering co-pilots, there are sales co-pilots. So why should we have like recruitment co-pilots? We should have assistants that help us to hire better, to hire faster, and to give a great candidate experience. And I think these kind of things are they're not the future. We are going to be using all of them in 2024. And I hope that kind of gave you some idea about like how some of these tools can be used in your team, by your team today. So I'm going to just stop sharing, and Meenakshi, back to you.
Yeah, thanks really for that sort of quick overview of how the AI is changing the space, and most importantly how it is being the co-pilot that is helping recruiters and talent acquisition teams to go to the next level. We have already started receiving questions, and while we move to the next phase, I'll ask everyone who's attending the session to kind of pour in their questions. We'll definitely we'll cover this in the next segment. So right now I just have a few questions for you, really. It's like more like a fireside, quick questions. Something very relevant to what we just talked about and shared your thoughts on. Scheduling or time to hire is a pain area. So talent teams often grapple with this prolonged time to hire, sort of a problem. Could you explain how Gen AI can address this more specifically from how have you kind of solved this problem through Babblebots for your clients? If you could share any success story where the client's time to hire was substantially reduced.
Yeah. So there are multiple ways. I mean, actually scheduling has been such a well-known problem that even integrations with different kinds of ATSs are providing some sort of capabilities now to do smart sort of scheduling, and not everything needs generative AI. I mean, these were fairly simple rule-based systems that are available in ATSs today. I think where particularly Babblebots intervention becomes interesting is because we do say that you do not need to schedule for the first round of interview, right? Because the conversations that are happening, the voice conversations that are happening with AI recruiters are asynchronous. So the candidates just click a link and then they can talk. So you're having like these AI recruiters on demand 24/7, right? So whenever the candidate is available, they can speak. And so there's no scheduling needed. And whenever the recruiter is available, they can actually assess the candidate and figure out what the next steps are. So for us, I think the best goal in terms of scheduling is to get to a point that none of this is needed. But having said that, let me share an example of a bank, and we had published this case study recently where the bank had done like a social media campaign to encourage women to come back to work, and they had received overwhelming response. They had like some, I don't know, maybe around 1,000 women who'd reached out to them over like a week and wanting to come back and join the bank. And this is a fairly large bank. So, but now you suddenly have like that high top of the funnel, and the hiring team already has all the other things that they are doing. This was just a marketing campaign, but they did want to at least respond to the women and figure out like which of these would fit their open roles. But it was humanly impossible, I think, to sort of actually address that. So what they had done is that they had sent out a customized conversation that we had created for them through Babblebots. And pretty much over a weekend, they got hundreds of responses, where after the response, you knew where these particular women wanted to work from, what kind of salary they were looking for, what kind of role they are looking for, what kind of skill sets they're already bringing to the table. Are they medium levels, senior level, or are they like entry level? Why were they out of, why did they take a career break? So all these questions could already be probed automatically. At the same time, we could also assess them for some of the skills that they claimed that they had, right? So just imagine your weekend starting on Friday, and by Monday you have done a few hundred interviews, and it all happened like pretty much overnight for them. So now instead of actually lining up those interviews, now they were already talking about connecting some of the relevant people to the hiring managers for the second round of interview. So what would have taken a few weeks to actually go through that, if at all they could like align the resources for that, it was now they were already talking about offer and like the second rounds of interviews within 2-3 days itself. So I think that really probably reduced like 3 or 4 weeks out of this whole engagement, and just really helped them build a very good top of the funnel in terms of diversity hiring, but also just a great experience for the candidates to get a chance to speak to the bank and tell them what they were looking for.
Yeah, nothing better than a happy customer and a happy candidate. So that's really, really kind of motivating, very, very motivating and very promising. That takes me to my next question. Improving the quality and fit of hires is very, very critical or crucial for any organization. How does AI, refine the recruitment process that, in your journey so far? How can it do that? And at the same time ensure a high caliber of candidate matches?
Yeah. So as I had mentioned in the presentation, right? If we can uncover the skill set of a person early on, I think that really actually. So a few things, if you can uncover early on, I think that reduces the time that is taking, right? So one is, of course, what are the parameters within which somebody wants to work? What's the salary they are expecting? How soon are they available? Are they willing to work from the office? Are they looking to relocate, or are they willing to relocate, and things like that, right? A lot of these deal breaker questions often come later in the interview cycle, and it is quite it can be quite frustrating because you like someone a lot, but then your budgets don't allow you to sort of work with them. So these questions, of course, are the simpler ones that can be uncovered early on. But even the skills, right? So whether you're technically good at, let's say if it is a software engineering role, if you are good at like some of the skills that you are claiming, like React or Angular, JavaScript, if it was a front end role, or if you're good at sales kind of roles, because you're claiming that you have a good B2C experience, what kind of B2C products have you sold, and what were the challenges? So a lot of these probing conversations actually uncover the skill set of a person, along with like some multiple choice questions that you can embed in the system. That just tells you, so you know the constraint within which they want to work, and you also know the skill level that you are looking for within which you will be interested in engaging with someone. Within like a 15-20 minute conversation, all this is getting uncovered. That really does help you sort of get a confidence on a person very quickly.
So yeah. So I mean, in last two questions, Rory, we have kind of covered some of the problem areas for organizations. In my next question, I just want to turn the table and kind of talk about the candidate experience, so to speak. And a positive candidate experience is is very, very important. It could be a decisive factor for job acceptance.
Yeah.
So how do you envision Gen AI enhancing this experience that actually would benefit the candidate and the organization?
Yeah. Yeah. So when we started building Babblebots, I think one of the things that we were very keen to focus on was that the candidate experience has to be very good, because we were sure that no matter how good a tool is or a capability is, if the candidates don't like it, none of the companies are going to be willing to sort of take that chance, because it is a very delicate interaction that you are having with a candidate when you're trying to recruit them. So so we wanted to be very, very mindful of what the candidate experience is going to be like. So I'm just going to share like a little clip about like what candidates say about speaking to these AI recruiters, and then I think that should answer this question for us. So give me a moment. Yeah.
Do you have any questions for me? While I cannot answer them right now, I will note them down and we can discuss them later if you get selected.
No, thank you. I'm good with this, and it was the first interaction with the AI recruiter, and it was very nice to connect with you. Thank you, Tina. I actually enjoyed the process. So, like, hopefully, like the work environment is also this innovative.
So it was pleasure to have a bot as an interviewer. This is my first time I am interacting with a bot. But this is shows there how the world is changing. This is transformation era.
मेरे लिए कोई सवाल है? मैं अभी इनका जवाब नहीं दे सकती, पर इन्हें नोट कर लूंगी। आगे के राउंड्स में आपको इनका जवाब मिल जाएगा।
आपका क्वेश्चन, आपके साथ बात करना बहुत अच्छा लग रहा है, और आपका जो सिस्टमेटिक जो बनाया ये मेरे लिए नया है, और इसको यूज करके और बहुत अच्छा लग रहा है।
धन्यवाद।
I think we can keep going on that, but I hope people did get an idea about that.
Yeah, I love the way the transition happened from English to Hindi, and which you also mentioned that communication is such a big thing, and with this definitely the barrier of language is being broken. In fact, one of the participants actually asked a question on this one, saying that how was the candidate experience while giving one-way video interview with a bot, so to speak. So I think you've answered that question. So I'm glad that this got covered. So the next question is on another topic that you kind of covered in your case study, the mention of case study that you talked about, diversity related to that. So research indicates that AI-driven hiring tools can increase the diversity of new hires by up to 25%.
Yeah.
Could you shed light on how AI incorporates blind profiling that will, help reduce bias and promote fairness in the entire hiring process?
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is a really key area of, in some sense, what is happening with AI, which people thought may be counter, but actually we are seeing repeatedly with our customers that in fact, blind profiling at the top of the funnel level is really helping increase the kind of candidate set that they are having in round 2, round 3 of interview. Because it's very easy now to just have like tens of people do this interview, and you don't have to, in some sense, make a call early on who you want to speak to. So if the companies that are going through this process of saying that everybody who's sort of marginally okay, like, they have like the right level of experience and maybe a few key things that are needed for the role, everybody should be interviewed by these AI recruiters. That is just unlocking the people who are coming from different regions, of course, different genders. So there is so much opening up of this pipeline that is happening by having something which is scaling very well. So what is happening is with these asynchronous conversations, there is no limit to the number of candidates you can speak to, right? So you do not have to make this judgment on whether somebody is going to be suitable or not, whether it is basis their region, especially in India, or it is basis their gender. So that really brings a lot of evenness to and improves. And so this blind profiling we'll see more and more is going to be used as a positive case. And we have already in our experience already seen multiple cases where Babblebots is being used to in fact just even out the playing field for a lot of candidates.
Great. So really, I have one last question, which I will probably, come to towards the end of the conversation. Now the floor is open for questions from the audience. We did receive some questions through our emails, but I'll just read out the question that we have received. Anmol is asking, metric to assess turnaround time. I'm assuming this is for hiring.
I mean, typically turnaround time is assessed in the number of weeks or number of days from, in some sense, the hiring time is from time to offer, and then there is, of course, time to join. So between offer and joining, there's, of course, like the notice period, which can differ for different, but the hiring team's time goes into time to offer. So that actually is already seeing a 10x improvement. So what was taking like 5-6 weeks can literally be done within a week now. So that is like a 10x impact that many of our customers are seeing. And I think anybody who's using such kind of capabilities will see that acceleration in the time to offer.
Great. Really, in the interest of time, I'm going to take 2 more questions from the audience, which we received. The first one is, one of the pain areas is ensuring communication between the HR, business, and TA team, the talent acquisition team. How does Gen AI simplify that?
Sorry, Meenakshi, can you say that again? What was the...
Yeah, I'll just repeat the question.
Yeah.
One of the pain areas is ensuring communication between HR, business, and talent acquisition team. How can Gen AI enable that?
Oh, that's a great question, actually. So I don't think Gen AI is the answer here. I think this is more about a communication. This is more about keeping the business completely in the loop with what is happening on the hiring cycle and making some easy ways in which they can communicate with each other. So, so one thing that like we do in Babblebots, which helps with a little bit here, but I'm sure there are like other solutions. So, but one thing that we do is like, for example, if you have a job description and you wanted to create like this custom conversation that the AI recruiter should have basis that job description, you can actually share that conversation with the hiring manager. So he or she really knows that what are the kind of questions that are being asked. So instead of having this back and forth about the hiring manager thinking that this is not a good candidate, but the recruiters thinking that they are actually a good candidate, you are clearing up this very, very early on, that these are the kind of questions that are going to be asked, and the hiring manager getting a chance to actually say whether they would like to do something else. So this really does change a little bit of the dynamic in how collaborative the hiring managers and the HR people can be. But I think this is more driven by them collaborating and the tool being in some sense secondary, but also enabling some of those capabilities.
All right. So yeah, so my next question, which is last question from the audience, is, you mentioned LinkedIn as one of the channels, right? People use LinkedIn. So how do you think Gen AI can, leverage tools such as LinkedIn? Is there some sort of, feature or something that probably Babblebot has built in or something of that sort, which could be then, explained?
Yeah, again, so I think we have built an extension that allows you to connect with LinkedIn very, very quickly. So for example, if you had like 100 candidates who have applied for an open role for you, instead of like engaging with them or downloading their profiles one by one, you can do it as a batch by using this extension that we have created. So this really, again, adds to how quickly you can process through the interested candidates and have them go through like a screening round of interview. So that capability is there. I think it's more It's less of Gen AI and more of engineering, how this is happening. But yes, I think once the information, when the applicants are sort of extracted from LinkedIn, after that, of course, the rest of the AI capabilities come in terms of figuring it out if they are minimally qualified or not, and then the custom conversations, the personalized conversations that you're having with them.
Great. That surely sounds very, very useful because everybody goes to LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So that's very useful. So that brings me to the end of this conversation. And I have just one last question for you, Rolly. I didn't ask this because I kept it for the last.
Yeah.
What was your inspiration behind creating Babblebots? We heard the Gen AI and how it is solving the hiring problem and how are you doing it.
Yeah.
But we just want to know, end this conversation with your story. What was
Yeah.
your motive behind creating?
So I think I was just trying to solve my own problem. I used to run sales training at Topper just before starting Babblebots, and we had to hire like hundreds of salespeople every week. This is the edtech boom era of 2019, 2020. Every edtech was trying to soak up every salesperson that was there in the country, and Topper was one of those funded companies. So how to actually funnel through and process through hundreds of such applicants every week was something, it was almost nightmarish to live through that. And I do have a little bit of a product background where we have built these kind of ML, at that time, machine learning type products in the past. So some dots connected and it felt like, okay, this madness has to have some automation. It needs to have a very human like automation, right? It can't be like a database type of automation. It should feel very personal to the candidate, because finally hiring is a very human activity. And that is why, the people are cautious in bringing automation in, because you finally work with the human being on the other side. So you want to have that humanness be alive. So after seeing that problem and connecting some of the background that I had, is like, there should be a way to create something which can have these hundreds of these conversations, but in a very human-like way. So voice for us was absolutely necessary. And also intelligent conversation was absolutely necessary. So it couldn't be like a list of FAQs. It had to listen to the candidate, pick that up and ask some interesting thing, follow-on question, which went further into their capabilities. So that was absolutely needed. And of course, then you had to build a whole team around it. And the team came together and we started to build something which seemed quite impossible to build at the start of last year. But we are very delighted at where we are today.
Thanks, Rolly, for sharing, your story. This definitely motivates me and it inspires me to do it. The less common or the unknown, basically solving the unknown.
Yes. There is a lot of joy, but a lot of misery also.
Yeah. With that, we have come to an end of this conversation. But I would like to request all the attendees to share their feedback for this conversation. Would like to hear their thoughts because we intend to do more such conversations. So on your screen, before you log out, please do fill the form. It's important for us to understand, your feedback, and any feedback is very good. It's a big learning.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining, everyone. And as Meenakshi is saying, please do take a minute or two to just fill out the form that is there on your screen, and wish everybody a great new year. And we'll see you all in 2024. Thank you.
You.
Bye.
Bye.